Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman. Now I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, and back for our next episode of the Margarita Monday Meetup podcast. Today we have no guests. You're just getting the old Seaman because we got plenty to talk about with what happened over the weekend. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive into the Seaman's experience of Comic-Con at Home 2020. Now, of course, before we get going, we have to, crack a margarita open. Where's my... I went to go downstairs to make margaritas and realized that there was no... I like to use Grand Marnier with the tequila and the... I use agave nectar and then fresh lime juice. But I was all out of Grand Marnier, and the liquor stores were closed, so I went down into the basement just to find something to drink, and stumbled across this Cayman Jack margarita. I don't know anything about this one. I mean, it's white, so that's weird, at least for me, because my margaritas don't look like this. So we'll see what old Cayman Jack has to say about margaritas as we crack that. Cheers, everybody. Happy Margarita Monday. Hope you enjoyed your Comic-Con at Home weekend if you were participating. Otherwise, just your weekend in general. And, hopefully you're having a good Monday. Sitting back, cracking a nice adult beverage, and joining the Seaman on our journey through Comic-Con at Home. Well, it's not bad, but it doesn't taste... all right, it tastes a little bit like a margarita. Not quite what I would make, but it'll get the job done for today. Alright, so we got our margarita in tow. It's time to dive into Comic-Con at Home. If you were following me all weekend long, I was putting up stuff as often as I possibly could. The difficult thing for me with not being in San Diego is that I had to work 2 days. So I had to pop up to work on Friday real quick, which kind of put a dent in my day that day. And then same thing on Sunday. Pretty much killed my entire Sunday. I got up to work at like 8 o'clock, I think, in the morning. I got home after 6, 7. But my Thursday and Saturday, which were actually my two biggest days, I got a lot of stuff done and had a really good time. The cool thing for me with Comic-Con at Home was the accessibility to everything. I'm not gonna lie, I've said this in some of the other videos, but I definitely missed being at con. Right down to the very funk that is the Comic-Con funk. If you're just around people who probably are minimally showering, you're in the convention center, you're out in close quarters, activations and stuff. So from the funk to the people to just the experience of being at con and all the different activations and things you see and panels you get to experience. I missed all of that, man, because I just missed that in general. The quarantine's rough. It's been a really long time to be mostly stuck at home. I have had the ability to see a couple friends and obviously coworkers when I go into the building. But other than that, man, it's been a rough go. But this was a really, really welcome outlet because of the accessibility in which Comic-Con gave us. For me personally, I've never been to a Hall H panel. I was in what I would assume were Hall H panels this year, or at least a couple of them. Like, I'm pretty sure Bill and Ted probably would have been in Hall H. I wouldn't be able to see it because I'd rather experience the con than sit on the Hall H line all day. But with that being said, one day I'll do the whole Hall H experience. But being able to see those panels and see all the panels was a blessing and a curse, right? My watch list is so big right now. I got so many panels that I wasn't able to get to. But I love the fact that I know, even though con is done, I can go back and still finish watching some of the panels and things that I wanted to watch. So that aspect of it was awesome. Then, for a Comic-Con at Home experience, I just think Comic-Con went above and beyond. They did everything they could to try to replicate the experience for people. From, opening up their store, very similarly to what happens to people who have actual tickets. The store gets opened, you can do your pre-order stuff, and then that way you can just pick it up at some point during the con. This all happened on Wednesday. The store opened, and what was nice at least I was hopeful that it was going to be a smooth Comic-Con weekend, specifically when it came to exclusives and buying things. Because my experience on the Comic-Con store wasn't too bad. Got in pretty quickly. Got all the things that I wanted to get. Nothing sold out. I was like, this is awesome. And then things got a little rocky over the course of the weekend. We had... So Wednesday is typically preview night, or for some people, night one. Usually Warner Brothers has a big panel. You know, they've had It pop off on Wednesday night. Not inside the convention center, but outside, just kind of like their own, what do they call it? They call it, I don't remember, but it's like, they're kind of like horror version of Comic-Con, like the night before, on preview night, and there was no Warner Brothers stuff at all, so Wednesday, there were some panels. It was a lot of educational panels, so I wasn't really trying to get into any of those. So I was really there for the exclusives on Wednesday. So like I said, my Comic-Con store experience really wasn't too bad. A little slow, but, you know, as long as you let everything load, got everything I wanted to get, which I was extremely happy about. I got a 3 of the pins, which were pretty cool. You know, I always like to get those. I got this dope flat brim San Diego Comic-Con at home hat, which was really awesome. And then I also got a, you know, Comic-Con t-shirt. I love, you know me, I'm a big graphic t-shirt guy. And when I go places, that's usually how I capture my experiences is, you know, obviously video, photos. But then physically, as far as things that I like to collect, I collect t-shirts. And the Comic-Con t-shirt had an exclusive, Joker's new girlfriend / sidekick punchline on it, and the punchline art and just the story kind of being in there from the beginning, really cool stuff. So I was like, definitely getting that shirt, and all that went really smooth. Like I said, it was just a little slow, you know, for things to load. You'd have to, like, some of the things you could put to your cart, like the pins you could do right from the main page, but like the shirts, the hats, you had to go to like a secondary page and then add it. So it was a little slow, but like I said, got everything. So I was very optimistic going into the Funko Pop exclusive toy drop, because there were some really cool exclusives coming out of Funko. They had one Comic-Con exclusive. It was a Black Lightning exclusive that was just, like, I would say Young Justice really put me on to Black Lightning. He, you know, really kind of gave me an idea of like what the character was, who he could be. Got really like into him, and you know, when I have seen him pop up in the comics, I'll grab things now. And one day I will jump into the show, and I believe that's what the model is based off of, is the show's character. But he just looked so dope, and it was the only Comic-Con exclusive. So the way Funko works is they'll have con exclusives, a show only. This being just the Black Lightning, and then they'll do exclusive team-ups with different stores. So like FYE, Target, Walgreens, they'll team up with Funko to also have SDCC exclusives. So all the exclusives launch on Funko to start, and the following night at midnight, the stores are allowed to put their exclusives up, so they get a small batch. So if you missed anything during the Funko drop, you had a secondary chance outside of the Black Lightning to get your pops. So I got in, got all my stuff. I grabbed Black Lightning. I grabbed Iron Bob from Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I grabbed this dope Michelangelo with like a surfboard from the Ninja Turtles that had like Comic-Con logos on it. I got a Ron Burgundy in pajamas with Baxter in pajamas with the Comic-Con logo all over them. That was pretty dope. I got there's a couple of, I think I had 8 total in my bag. I think I had the like one of the red Emperor guards from Star Wars. And then the toucan. I had the toucan in the space, the mascot of Con in the space suit, an astronaut suit. And they were all really dope. And got through, like, got them all in my cart. There was one other one that I can't remember right now. But regardless, there were 8 that I had in total. Boom, had them all in my cart, ready to go. Go through shipping, go through the credit card, go to check out, and there's like a thing where usually your shipping total will pop up based on where you live, the different options that are available to you, and how fast things can get shipped, and you usually have to pick one. And that thing loaded for a half hour on my phone, and then crashed. So I jumped back onto the site, got all 8 items again, got in, got all the way through, hit the payment button. This time the shipping popped up right away. Hit payment, and instead of going to a receipt page, I went back to the start of the like checkout page, and it was like 5 of your items have been removed. You're getting the mascot parrot in the astronaut suit, the Michelangelo, and the Ron Burgundy and Baxter, which I'm super stoked about. I was very happy with all 3 of those. They were 3 of the ones I really wanted. And then, that the other ones were gone, which was a real big bummer. Specifically, the Black Lightning one, because that was the Comic-Con only exclusive. I had no chance of getting that one again. And then, like, not that I would be someone that would go to sell. I just like to have things that have, like, special value. That baby was going for, like, $250, $300 immediately on eBay, which is another thing that really kind of grinds your gears as a Comic-Con goer when you lose on an exclusive, because there are people who simply are buying these not to own and have and cherish and love, but to just simply flip, which just kind of sucks. And I get it, man. That's how the store is set up. I would think that you would go more along the traditional lines of, like, buying, like, tickets to, like, a concert or something like that, where you go into a virtual queue. I know we're trying to not have lines at Comic-Con, and technically, you really didn't sit in lines at Comic-Con, a little bit of waiting here and there. The shipping thing just pissed me off because they told us not to leave or refresh the page. Had I refreshed the page and tried to go through again, I probably would have gotten everything. That part was frustrating, but, like, I just don't understand. Like, I get it, man, but it's a digital line, right? So, like, you can get into your queue. So, like, the way, like, a lot of concerts and things work is when you want to buy a ticket, you hit, like, purchase tickets. You get, like, I want 4 tickets or whatever, and they put you into a line. And then they carry you all the way to the front, and then hopefully they don't sell out by the time you get a chance to actually buy the ticket. And you'd think that's the way you would want to do it here. This way, at least if you get something into your shopping cart, you're not going to lose it. That was my mindset, so I got really excited, and then I was super bummed. But that's Comic-Con, right? Like, even from home, you're going to have ups and downs, specifically trying to get exclusives because they are exclusive. So like I said, I wasn't too disappointed. I was able to go online and get the Iron Bob, and I think I might have gotten 1 or 2 of the other ones. So I was able to find most. Obviously couldn't get the Black Lightning, so that was a bummer because he was so cool looking, man. If I can, I'll throw some of these images up behind me as we're talking. But he was really, really dope looking, man. Like, I was really hoping for it. But that was pretty much most of Wednesday. It was kind of like exclusives and just mentally getting myself prepped to go for con. Thursday hit, and Thursday hit with a bang. This was my biggest day of all the days. Now, if you followed along with me all weekend, any panels or things that I saw that had content, I was putting that up on YouTube. So what I want to do is I want to go through and just kind of hit some of my favorite panels from the weekend. And I'll mention the ones that I've already done videos on, but if you want to know more about those panels and see what that footage was, please go check out those other videos, after watching this. Put links and all that stuff down below so it's easy to find all these things in the description. So, the big one for Thursday that I was most excited about was the New Mutants. Well, I heard they were having a panel at 2:30. There was no MCU. There was no DCEU. I was stoked because I've been waiting for this panel not this panel, but for this movie for freaking ever, man. Since what, 2016 or 17, I think, is when we started seeing things for this. And now we're in 2020 pandemic world, and we keep seeing the date get pushed. And I did, I absolutely loved it. The whole cast was there. Josh Boone was there. Just kind of listening to them talk. They got to react to some things, which was really cool. And just seeing how genuine they all are. It's a cast you want to root for. It's something I hope we could see in the future. Actually, Boone did an interview, I think, with Collider at some point over the weekend itself, Saturday or Sunday, and had talked about his plans for a trilogy. Because when he first was on the project and Fox still owned everything, the idea was that this was going to be a new series they could launch. And it sounded pretty interesting, and I hope maybe, if this thing does really well, fans, like, really embrace it, maybe they'll find a way to insert these guys into the MCU. I don't know. I like to dream big and then be really, really disappointed when things don't happen. Like, say, for instance, I've always said I'd love to see the Spider-Verse characters cross into the real world because all those actors would kind of match up with the character age they would be playing in the real world. Or vice versa, the characters from the real world, like Tom Holland going into the Spider-Verse. But that aside, I'm getting off on a tangent as per usual. But when it came to the New Mutants, you know, it was just one of these things where it's like, I just hope that it gets accepted, because this cast looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's never been seen before. It doesn't, you know, it's not an established property that Fox already had that you're getting rid of. Like, it's something that's kind of new, and Disney, I think, has been semi-involved in Boone's kind of putting this back together to get it to where it needs to be. But I don't want to, you know, go too long on New Mutants, because I talked about them at length twice. I did 2 videos, one reacting to their trailer, one reacting to the panel in general. Like I said, I'll put those links down below so you can find those. But the panel was just awesome. I absolutely loved it. I'm so stoked for this movie. I think it looks fantastic. I can't wait. Then another one of the panels that hit on Thursday that also had video content for me to check out was the Boys panel. Now, we got the trailer for the Boys right before Comic-Con, so I wasn't sure what to expect with the panel, other than a lot of fun. I was physically at the panel in San Diego last year, where they showed the premiere. They premiered the series, first 2 episodes. Aisha Tyler moderated then. She moderated again this time around, and it was great, man. Like, you had the whole cast plus executive producer Eric Kripke and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg popped up to announce that the show had been renewed for season 3 already, which is awesome, because I adore the Boys. And, you know, I just figured it would be cool to just see the panel. And, they go through everybody. You know, Aisha does a really good job of talking to everybody, getting an idea of where they might be going in the season, things that could be, you know, motivations for each character. All that stuff's really fun. But then they had a clip called The Whale, where we see Butcher drive a speedboat at high speeds through, spoilers, heading for a outlet tunnel to get out of there. He's trying to escape. They're being chased by dolphins, which means the deep is involved. And all of a sudden, a giant whale shows up, starts chasing. The whale gets in front of him, crashes in front, right up on the beach. Deep pops up. He's all like excited and proud, and then he sees Butcher put like the pedal to the metal on the boat, and I don't know how well I called this out in the video when I broke down the trailer, but there's a moment of panic in his eyes. It's like a fraction of a second where he's like all proud to, okay, get ready, this is gonna be bad. That was absolutely wonderful. And then they drive the boat through the whale, and there's blood everywhere, just what you would expect. It's one of the most outrageous things we've seen on The Boys, and we've seen a lot of outrageous things on The Boys. And what was cool is, you know, it wasn't all CGI. They said they had an actual prosthetic working whale that was like a ridiculous size. It had a moving tail, opening mouth. Really cool. So I love that panel too. If you want to know like more of my thoughts and more about the panel, check out that link down below. Like I said, Thursday was a busy day for me, because even before we got to those panels, one of the first things I watched was the Truth Seekers panel. Another one that had a trailer for us, which I reacted to. So we did another video that kind of broke down that trailer and that panel. But I loved the crap out of that, because I'm a huge Simon Pegg and Nick Frost fan. When those two guys team up for anything, it's always spectacular, and it's been a while since I've kind of seen them do anything together. So this show that I believe is going to Amazon, I believe, is you know, these two guys, Pegg is only in it a little bit. He kind of runs a company that Frost works for, but Frost is also like a paranormal seeker. He believes in like the paranormal and that stuff, and it's got like a Ghost Hunters meets like more tone and look of the X-Files. And like I said, those two guys are just great, man. Like the whole panel, they make you laugh. And the panel also had Nick Serafinowicz and Nat Saunders, who work on the show with them. Again, just like a really funny panel. The interactions between Frost and Pegg sometimes are great. And again, I talk about that. That link will also be down below in the description if you're here on YouTube. Yum yum, Cayman Jack margarita. Wish I gotta go get my own stuff. I really prefer the homemade. But I digress. Then there was one other panel that also had content, had a trailer that I checked out, Utopia, which also had the entire cast, some of the big names that are kind of mixed in there, John Cusack, and oh man, I should probably pull these up on IMDb, right? But you got John Cusack and Rainn Wilson are two of the big names in there, and then a bunch of your younger folks. I can't think of her name right now. I want to say Jessica Roth, but she's from the Happy Death Day movie. She's also in the show. And it was a really cool concept. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't put two and two together. When I saw it, I was like, oh, Utopia panel. And I just saw John Cusack, Rainn Wilson, and I think it's Jessica Roth. I was like, ooh, I'll check that out because I like those guys. Not putting together that my one friend back in the day at work had mentioned to me that there was a show on BBC called Utopia that was really, really dope. And it was like, you know, kind of based around this like group of nerds who are conspiracy theorists that kind of start to see things happening in the world that reflect things that happen in a comic book. And I was like, oh man, that's really cool. And being a comic book nerd, obviously right up my alley. And then kind of forgot about it. So when I jumped into the panel, I didn't know what I was getting into. And when I watched the trailer, which is what they led off with, I know what I was getting into. And I was just like, this looks really interesting. And then, you know, even just watching it, I really just was kind of picking up on tone and feel, which you should know because showrunner Gillian Flynn, you know, she has worked on things like Widows and Gone Girl. You know, also I think Sharp Objects. But just from a tone perspective, I was like, as soon as they said that it was Gillian Flynn or Gillian Flynn, I always get these names wrong. But as soon as they said her, I was like, oh man, okay, I got an idea. And then when the trailer kind of matched someone, I was like, this looked cool. I wasn't putting all the pieces together. Like, I missed the whole comic book part of it. Like, I saw that they had a book. I didn't really realize it was a comic book. And when they got into the actual panel, they kind of broke into all that stuff. And I was like, oh, this show seems really sweet. And then when they also mentioned it was, like, based on the Danny Kelly British version, I was like, oh, that's what this is. And I got super excited. So I also reacted to that stuff and talked more at length of that panel. So if you want to see that, again, link will be down below in the description on YouTube. So you'll have that there. You know, but like I said, all of those that kind of came with content. All the content was really good. All the panels were really fun. Pretty much all the panels I jumped into over the course of the weekend were really fun because you just get a real sense of tight-knit community with a lot of these groups. I mean, you're talking about TV shows. Some have been on for multiple seasons. These are groups that have been together for a long time, so the chemistry is really, really good. They interact well on camera, even if it's a Zoom call. You know, just like they went, and almost to a degree better than when they're on stage because we're able to see all of their faces up close, nice and tight the entire time. When it's up on screen, it's kind of at the discretion of whoever's directing that panel of what goes up there. But it's just kind of like fun to watch these groups of people who know each other. Some are friends. You know, some just worked together for a long time. I love watching those interactions, and all of those panels on Thursday did that, including the one panel that I didn't react to any footage from, the Solar Opposites panel. Justin Roiland, one of the two creators of Rick and Morty, also voices Rick and Morty, created another show for Hulu that's called Solar Opposites, about a couple aliens on Earth, and I've dipped my toe into the show, and it's pretty funny. I haven't had a chance to go through the whole season. But I just love anything that Roiland does. I love Roiland's humor. I love the way his brain works as a creator. And, I mean, the cast here is awesome. I mean, you got Thomas Middleditch, you know, from Silicon Valley, or you might know him as the Verizon guy now. They actually had a funny bit. They were talking about AT&T, and I think it was Roiland said something about, like, AT&T, and Middleditch was just like, no, like, no, not about AT&T. Verizon is the best network. But you also had Sean Giabrone, who I believe is from the Goldbergs, Mary Mack, and then producers Mike McMahon, and Josh Bicel. And just, again, another one of these things where it's like a group of people that have worked together. They really get a good vibe for each other. Mary Mack, just like, and Sean would just kind of slip in and out here and there with just like perfect moments that mesh so well with the conversation. And Middleditch and Roiland's relationship is fantastic, man. They played off each other, and they played into the characters a couple times during the panel, which was great because, like, you can just tell that they're having fun with the show and with the characters and with creating it, and just kind of listening to some of the things that they're hoping to do with season 2. They were talking about crossovers because everybody's like, when are you gonna cross over with Rick and Morty? And so Roiland's like, well, I mean, you got different people at play. Like, Rick and Morty is owned by HBO. Well, it's owned by Cartoon Network, which is owned by Warner Brothers, which is now owned by AT&T. That's how the whole AT&T Verizon conversation started. And then obviously Disney owns Hulu, which owns Solar Opposites. So he's like, you gotta get these big companies to play ball. But both him and Bicel very adamant in the fact that they come up with all the different crossovers. He's like, we've come up with every crossover you could possibly think of. We're always trying to come up with crossover ideas. Because if one day they happen, then we want to do them. If they don't, well, then they'll just sit in a vault and not ever touch them. But they were like, we would love to do like a Rick and Morty one. You know, we'd love to do like just all these different crossovers they were throwing out. And I was like, that would be awesome. But like you said, two massive companies, and at any time, you know, Brian was just like, it'd be great, like when you're working on all these different shows and things, specifically cartoons, if you could get these big companies sit down and talk and be like, hey, let's cross over IP, because that'll be a lot of fun, and both everybody will win. Like, you'll get people tuning in over here from, you know, if you only have Hulu fans that like Solar Opposite, you might get them to go over to Rick and Morty, or vice versa, Rick and Morty to go over to Solar Opposite. Like, it'd just be something that would be beneficial for everybody, especially in this world of streaming. So maybe one day we might see something like that, and the guys are kind of hopeful. But other than that, man, like I said, it's just really just the ideas and just the way that you listen to these people talk about creating. And Roiland, obviously, I've had, you know, interactions with, both meeting him last year at San Diego Comic-Con with the entire cast of Rick and Morty, which was awesome, and they had a panel. And you understand the kind of fun and just his humor. It was just a super, super enjoyable panel on Thursday. So that pretty much wrapped up everything that I was doing on Thursday. Like I said, a lot of panels early. The con popped off strong on Thursday, for me at least, in what I was getting into on my schedule. Now, dying as I try to sip on my fake margarita. That's, you know, it's not too bad. It's really kind of a little too sweet for the old Seaman. But gotta have margarita on a Margarita Monday. Am I right? So anyway, if we move on to Friday, Friday was a day that started off again with a bang for me, because there was a panel moderated by IGN's Terry Schwartz. I love her. She's always at con. Does a great job for IGN too. But she interviewed Charlize Theron, who's one of my all-time favorites. And what the panel was about was one of the things that makes me love Charlize so much. I love her general range. She can play anything, man. Like, she can do comedies. Her and Seth Rogen's political comedy that they did was phenomenal. Totally didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and she was brilliant. It was like one of the first times I'd really seen her go all in like that. But she can do the drama. She could be an Oscar-nominated actress. She can do, and then she can do all the action, and that's what this panel was about, man. It was, you know, her career as an action star and all-around badass. And her insights, I thought, were just brilliant. Like, talking about how when she started to get into the action stuff, you know, I think like right around, they were similar in timing. But you had The Italian Job, which was a lot of driving. And then you had Aeon Flux, and Charlize offered up really, really interesting things about both experiences. She was like, the thing with Aeon Flux was, you know, it was a different time, right? Like, back then, a lot of action scenes were cut fast, and that's kind of detrimental. And specifically now, when you go back and rewatch a lot of action movies, it's kind of annoying, because now we've gotten to that stage where action movies give you set pieces that you drop back so you can see everything. If there's cutting, it's benefiting the action. It's not trying to hide anything. You want to see everything. And you know, Aeon Flux had other problems, obviously. And she's like, you know, especially when you're making it too, you don't necessarily know what the final outcome is going to be. And then, you know, it kind of flops, and she had busted her ass to be able to do it. You know, it's one of these. A lot of times she was talking about how, like, women in the role of action movies just don't get the same credit or same, you know, like, belief that male actors were getting back then. She was talking about The Italian Job and how, you know, it kind of lit a fire under her ass to go above and beyond everybody else. She was, you know, because she did almost all of her own driving in that movie. And it was because she was like, one, they put me through like 3 or 4 weeks more than the guys had on the driving, and that kind of pissed her off, but also, like I said, set that fire. under her to just push and be the best, so that she was doing everything, and she was doing stuff that the guys couldn't do. She was like, there's one scene where she does like a couple like turns and 360s, and there was a day where they were doing 360s and like the guys were vomiting because they couldn't handle it, and she was just crushing it. So she's like, you get something like Aeon Flux and you worked so hard to crack into the world of action that when it flops and kind of ends up going what it does, you're like, that might have been my only shot. So the next time she got a shot, she went full tilt. And then, like, she talked about just, like, the general evolution of the action movies that she was in, going back to that era where there's a lot of quick cuts, tight quarters stuff, to going and working on something like Mad Max Fury Road, where she plays Furiosa, which they're getting ready to do a Furiosa, like, prequel movie, and they're recasting. I don't know if the casting is final, but some of the names I've seen floated out there, I'm like, that would be interesting. Like, I could see that work. It could be really good. But at the same time, you're just like, I really would love to see Charlize in a Furiosa movie, though. Like, you could add so much more. Like, Mad Max Fury Road was a genius movie. But it's basically, you drive one way, and you drive back the other way. In a Furiosa-only movie, you could do so much more. The character's so rich, and I would love to see Charlize do all that stuff. But she said, again, it was just like a different animal. It's a different beast. You were out in the desert, and they were doing all these things, and she was like, it was one of the things that helped her appreciate action to an even bigger degree, where it's not always just about what you're doing, but how big and some of the things that are going on around you, and the realism. She's like, it was one of the first movies she had done besides The Italian Job where it was like, but bigger, like on this massive action scale, where it was like things were real, and she's like, you really started to see how fans reacted to the realism of a movie and how much that enhances the experience. Because even though there might not have been a lot of hand-to-hand combat, it was a lot of driving stuff in Mad Max Fury Road, the things that go on are huge in scope, in the scope of the movie. And then those action set pieces are just, you got guys freaking hanging off like these giant trucks playing heavy metal music on guitar, like flaming guitars and wild stuff, and all of it was built, all of it was done. Obviously there's a little CGI in there, but like a lot of it's practical. And she was like, that was something that kind of really woke up another thing kind of in her, that when she started to produce her own movies, one of the things she wanted to go after and wanted to do was Atomic Blonde. And this was, I adore Charlize. This story is great. She's talking about how it was approached, and they were given 8 pages of a comic book that hadn't even been released, like it didn't exist in the actual world, for Atomic Blonde. And she saw the 8 pages and just told her manager yes, not knowing like what was gonna happen. And it was one of those things when she kind of realized like what she kind of gotten herself into. It was like, okay, we have to make sure this is amazing, and that's why she made sure she went and got David Leitch. She trained like crazy hard. And one of the other things that she talked about too, and was something that she highlighted specifically with Atomic Blonde, and then again in The Old Guard, which just came out on Netflix, is that, in being a female action star, it's not about being able to do what the guys can do. Because she's like, if I'm fighting a 6'5", 225-pound dude, I can't take him down by punching him in the face. I will break all the bones in my hand. And she's like, and that's just nature. It's just the way that women are built. More than likely, if you're punching with your fist, you're going to end up breaking the bones in your hand. But if you're punching with your palm, or you're using your forearm, or your elbow, or your head, or your knees, that's how I can take down a 6'5" dude that's 225 pounds. Because it's not that I'm it's not that I'm stronger than him or more physical than he is, but I can tactically dismantle him and take him down. And that was some of the stuff that she really started to get into on the training. And then she was like, working with, David, you're working in these really, really long sequences, man. She has super long sequences in this movie. And she's like, sometimes it's a 7 or 8 minute take, which doesn't seem like a lot, but she's like, when you've got this hardcore choreography and all this action and some of the things that she wasn't used to doing, she's like, it is a grind. But always, she's like, in the back of my mind is Aeon Flux. That could have been my last chance. So if I mess up, if I slip, I stumble, I might never get the opportunity to do it again. And that's why she just pushes herself to do as much as she can. And, you know, she kind of closed out with the old guard talking about how she had to learn so many variations of martial arts. And she's like, if you're a martial artist, you know, perfecting a martial art is not easy. It takes years and years and years of training. And she's this, you know, hundreds, thousands of year old, you know, mercenary who has to be proficient in everything. So she was like, training for it was insane. And then obviously she's like, when you're training that hard, you want it to show off, you want it to look good. And that's why, again, in the old guard, you get the same type of approach where you got these longer shots. You know, the one that both Terry Schwartz brought up, and one that I always point to, is her fight that she has with Kiki inside the plane. It's like a 2.5, 3 minute shot where it's all this tight quarters, hand-to-hand combat, and you know, she just talked about how much like fun that was, and like that's what pops, because people know when it's you, and they know what they're looking at, and you know, that just kind of goes all into it. And she's like, you know, now that I'm there and I have this platform to do these things, she's like, I can't slip up, you know, because that might close a door opportunity for someone behind me. And that's why she's just always kind of pushing to keep going. So that gets me excited for so many things, you know, because you know she's just looking to up that game. I keep hoping that this crossover happens. Get Charlize and John Wick together in the same place. It would just be amazing. So that was easily one of my favorite panels of the entire con, just because the content was so rich. Again, links will be down below. I highly recommend checking out the Charlize conversation. It was so good, and she's had such a crazy, long, interesting career. It was just really, really like an interesting one to kind of listen to and talk about. And then, you know, throughout the course of the day, on Friday, you know, I just kind of popped in and out of panels. Mostly I was looking for things that I enjoy, or, you know, things I enjoy that have awesome casts, like Bob's Burgers or Archer. Their panels are fantastic because those groups have been together for so long. They get each other's comedy. They're really able to bounce off each other and play off each other. It's more about watching that group than jumping in to get new content, like, oh, show me what's coming up in the next season, give me something exclusive. It's, this interview is exclusive, this interview is amazing, because watching these characters who have worked together for so many years interact, specifically in animation, I find you just always end up with really fun casts that work together in animation. Like the Rick and Morty group, when I met them last year, you could tell how tight they are. Like, they hang out all the time. They party hard. They showed up late, and I was talking to Sarah Chalk, and she was like, yeah, no, she's like, Justin got in last night, and we went to town, and it was a rough morning. Like, just I love seeing that type of stuff, and you get that with the animated shows, I think, even a little bit more than the live action shows, because you're not always together. You're in sound studio, you know, sound booths and things of that nature. So it's almost like it drives those people to want to get to know each other outside of the studio more often, because you're not always in the same space as each other when you're doing recordings. Obviously, sometimes you are, but not always. So I love seeing those types of panels, just because, one, I love adult cartoons. I love cartoons in general. I love kid cartoons. All cartoons are wonderful. And those two casts in particular are two of my all-time faves. And both feature the same lead actor in H. John Benjamin, who does Bob and Archer and is phenomenal in both. I absolutely adore that man and those shows. So those are definitely fun on Friday. And then the last kind of big panel, I guess you could say, I saw was the upcoming Marvel show for Hulu called Hellstrom, following Damien and Anna Hellstrom. A comic property I'm not super familiar with, and a show that I wasn't super familiar with, but I was like, hey, it's Marvel, I'll check it out. And we got a trailer, and it looks really dope, and the cast is a lot of fun. It was actually my friend Crystal, who I usually am at the Comic-Cons with. We interact all weekend long. I'm like, Crystal, keep me on my toes, man. There's too much going on for me to keep up with. You know all the right people. Like, and she was great, man. Funko had like a giveaway night at one point, which was a lot of fun. Didn't win anything, but like was in there, and some of the Funko Pops are just, they're crazy. Like how the stuff Funko comes up with is just nuts. But yeah, so she was like, the Hellstrom panel was actually a lot of fun because I like the cast. And I went in, fell in love with the cast. Now I'm so on board with the show, and the show looks cool, and it's Marvel horror. It looks like it's gonna be scary. Like, it was one of those things where the cast hadn't seen anything before. It was the first time any of them saw stuff. So like toward the second half of the trailer, they had all of them kind of pop up on the side, and you were seeing their reactions, especially to some of the scary stuff. And they were talking about how they like physically jumped and things. So it looks dope. And again, I talked about that. I will put the link for that video and for that panel again down below in the description. But that was pretty much it for Friday. Like I said, Friday I had to pop up to work for a while. So, you know, I got in as many panels as I could, and then, you know, kind of did the work thing, came home and did all the videos. So that was pretty much all of Friday. Then Saturday hit, and Saturday was yet again another kind of big day for me. And was yet again another day that started off with a bang because of an action star who is amazing when it comes to hand-to-hand stuff. We talking about Mr. Keanu Reeves, and let me tell you, this guy has been one of my favorite actors forever. You know, when it comes to action, John Wick, that series is my favorite of all the action series. And he's just such a likable guy because all the stories you hear about him are always really good. I mean, this is a guy who has a tortured past, things that have happened to his family and close, you know, friends, and just where he comes from. There's so much darkness that can come out of a past like that. To see a man be who Keanu Reeves is, and then hear all the stories about how amazing he is and how nice and how welcoming and how friendly he is, and then you get to see him completely uncut just talking about filmmaking. It's joyous to watch because of the joy that comes out of that man, dude. Like, he lights up like a light bulb, man. Like, it was amazing. And my day started with the Constantine panel, 15th anniversary of Constantine, a movie that was shredded by critics and adored by fans, because it has tons of comic accurate stuff outside of the fact that Keanu is not British or blonde. But that movie's just so cool. You know, it's one of those, you know, director and writer Francis Lawrence, who came from music videos prior to this. This was his big first feature. Like, he just had so many interesting ideas and concepts, and he knew the comic book. And even though Keanu didn't know the comic book prior, got in and started kind of reading and just like really enjoying the character. And they nail so many things in that movie. Like, it's so underrated, and it came out at a time when comic book movies were not revered the way comic book movies are revered now. I think if Constantine came out in today's day and age, it would be wildly accepted by critics. And there have been critics that have come out and apologized. I think Rotten Tomatoes came out and maybe made that. I want to say either Francis or producer Akiva Goldsman, I kind of mentioned where maybe it was RT, or, you know, there were a couple places that kind of came out later on down the road said we were wrong. We didn't really understand what we had with Constantine and how good it is. So it was just fun to watch them talk, and all three of them, you know, they kind of talked about how they kind of have had a relationship, you know, during the course of the movie, and they've kept in touch. They hadn't all been together in a few years, I think. But it was cool. Like, they immediately, like, that bond, that chemistry, and just listening to them reminisce about the making of the movie. I mean, specifically Francis Lawrence. This is his first feature film, so like there were so many things he had to learn. And then Akiva just talking about how they were kind of striving to do something different and be something original. And then they talked. One of the most interesting things they talked about is how it got the rated R rating. And Akiva was like, it was crazy. We were shooting for a PG-13 movie, and he was like, we went in, and I think one of the first screenings, like within 3 minutes of stuff up, like everybody put their pads down. They were just like, there's too much dread. Like the scene where Keanu sits down with the cat in the pot of water to go to hell. They were like, we thought you were gonna rip the cat's face off because it was so the dread in the movie is just so there. And so that he's like, and then Francis was like, yeah, man, like if you looked, everything we did, we followed everything to a T. Like everything that we had to do, we'd hit. And they got the R rating, and they were like, what? And I guess he was saying, you know, it has to do with demons. There was just too many demons. And it's like, well, the movie is about John Constantine and lots of like that's part of the, like, you can't not make the movie without demons. And Lawrence just said he was bummed because had he known that it would be R at the end, he's like, I would have gone full tilt and went for an R-rated movie. So he's like, it's really a PG-13 movie with an R rating, which I found to be fascinating. But the best part of the panel was Keanu Reeves. Now, Keanu was also on later on in the day in the Bill and Ted. panel, which we'll talk about in a second. But obviously, the whole cast was there, so there was a lot of people here. Much more intimate conversation, hosted by, or moderated rather, by Collider's editor-in-chief, Alex Weintraub. Did a wonderful job. Somebody who really knew the movie, so knew all the right questions to ask. But because it was a more intimate and smaller setting, Keanu got a lot of time, obviously, to talk. And listening to him talk, like I said, is joyous, dude. Like, he just he'll be talking about something, and then he'll just think of somebody that was working on the movie and be like, do you remember this person? And then, like, he physically gets so excited and like talking about how awesome the people are that he works with, and how great the experience was, and you know, like, just all the different people, from like the person who worked the rigs to the first AD to the lunch people, like, and his memory is so sharp, like pulling up different, well, mostly sharp. He had a couple times even where he like sort of missed. He's like, oh no, yeah, you're right, I do remember it going that way, and then would note, but like just the people and the names and the things he would pull up, and just how excited he got. It's wonderful to watch, and like listening to him talk about filmmaking and being an actor and the craftsmanship of it, just amazing. Like, again, there's a guy that's been in business for forever, and he's one of my favorite actors. And every time he speaks, man, he just talks about it. He's like, I just love it. I just love it so much, man. He's like, because you know, Weintraub mentioned how when he was on set, you know, Keanu had like driven down to come down and talk to him. He wasn't even supposed to be on set the day he was, you know, visiting this movie or whatever, and like gave him time, and then just got up and left. And he, you know, he's like, that's not, and he's so humble, man. Like, Weintraub was like, that's not normal, man. Like, that's not how things work. He's like, you know, I just love what I do, man. You know, and like, he's just so awesome. I love Keanu so much. So the whole Constantine panel was great, man. I just love listening to them talk about Constantine, what the plans were back then, how excited they were. And it's upsetting when you see like a studio excited about something, and you know, the creatives are excited about something, and the fans get excited about something, but because it doesn't do money at the box office and the critical reviews weren't great, it doesn't end up going anywhere. And it's one of those things where DC owns all of this stuff, and they're kind of carving out their DCEU again, you know, and what it looks like in the future. But like, if you ever, and you know, they're winning by going into more comic accurate things these days. And one of the things with Constantine is no blonde hair, no British accent. And they actually asked Keanu that, and he was like, no, was never even in question. Nobody asked me, and it was never gonna happen. But like, I would love to see, like, if you do Justice League Dark, or you do something that brings Constantine around, I'd love to see you bring Keanu back as him, man. It would be fun, and it would probably be accepted in a way. Like, bring this whole team back, man. Like, I'd love to see Francis Lawrence, Akiva Goldsman be involved too. Like, it would just, I think it would be a lot of fun. Probably won't happen, but hey, DC, if someone out there's listening, you want to go Constantine, I say call Keanu, bring him back. I think he'd probably do it, because listening to him talk about it was just amazing. He's so much fun, man. Like, just enjoyed it so much, and just enjoyed working on it and making it, because the character is so interesting. So I absolutely love that panel. And then, of course, like I said, he was also on the Bill and Ted panel that was hosted by Kevin Smith, and that panel was massive because everybody was there. You had Keanu and Alex Winter, obviously, Ted and Bill, respectively. Then you had Samara Weaving, who's playing Bill's daughter, and Bridget Lundy Payne, who's playing Ted's daughter. William Sadler, who plays Death, was there. Then you had Dean Parasot, who's directing, who did Galaxy Quest. So you want to talk about meshing? That's a director who come in and mesh with Bill and Ted, I think, so well. And then, of course, the original writers, man, the original team. They've been Bill and Ted for 30 years. Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson. And what was cool is, you know, Kevin Smith moderated, and he was talking to them, and you know, Solomon and Matheson were talking about how, like, when they were writing Bill and Ted, they were the first Bill and Ted. He's like, we would just mess around with the voices and pretend to be them, and then we'd go out in public and pretend to be them. And he was like, so the first Bill and Ted were you two guys? And he was like, yeah. And then they were talking about casting, and I think Alex and Keanu may have already auditioned at that point. Maybe they hadn't, but Solomon and Madison were talking. They had a bunch of auditions. They hadn't found the right guys yet. And then they were at McDonald's, and they saw these two young kids online, just the way they were acting, and they're like, man, those guys. Like, that's what we need. That could be Bill and Ted. And then they're like, and then, you know, we're back in the audition room, and these two guys, and it's Keanu and Alex, and they were Keanu, like, crazy. And then they end up, of course, being Bill and Ted. And again, the cool thing with that panel is listening to those two guys, Keanu and Alex, obviously, and then William Sadler, talk about the relationships that they had on set, and then specifically with Solomon and Matheson and Reeves and Winter, the relationship that they've had for 30 years now. You know, because, you know, obviously that was one of the big breaks for both Keanu and Alex. They were young kids. Solomon and Matheson were kids, basically, you know. They were super young, and just listening to them talk about the original film was awesome, and like, just kind of feeling how, like, they became best friends, that group, and how they still go out to get dinner and stuff, and, like, it's just, you love hearing those kinds of stories, especially for movies that you absolutely adore. You know, especially when those characters are characters you adore. A lot of times you see two characters that are awesome on screen, but off camera they might not like each other. So you see that real legitimate friendship and bond. It's just really, really awesome. So I loved all of that stuff. But the thing that got me most excited from this panel in particular... Sorry, I'm talking a lot and not drinking, and it's getting warm. It is not a good warm margarita. But the thing that got me really, really excited was Kevin Smith's reaction to the movie. Because we've seen a lot of our properties from when we're kids try to come back and not work. You know, for whatever number of reasons. A lot of times it just doesn't work, and you end up sitting there and looking back going, man, you should have just let it alone. It was perfect the way it was, and then we brought it back, and now there's a mark against it. And Kev is actually somebody who pulled this off quite well. I thoroughly enjoyed Jay and Silent Reboot. It was a movie that was made for its fans. And that's one of the reasons it works as something that comes back so long after the first time you did it. Because it played into the things that the fans love. I have a feeling that's what this movie is going to do, and listening to Kevin talk about it, it certainly seems that way. But he said it's just a beautiful movie. He's like, it's funny. He's like, they cracked the code on how to bring it back. And it works, and it hits, and the relationship that they have with their daughters, and the way the girls function into the story, and what it does. You know, Kev was like, I was sobbing for the last 30 minutes. This is a movie you're supposed to cry at, but, like, there were so many beautiful things, and just so many things that were spot on the money. So that got me super excited, because that's always the big worry. I wasn't super worried, because I trust Keanu inherently, even though I know he's been involved in some rough movies. But it's just so nice when you hear someone who's seen the movie and goes, it's everything you would have wanted a movie that comes back this long after to be. And then, like I said, just listening to everybody talk. I mean, William Sadler, when they asked him what his favorite moment is, he got, like, semi-choked up. He was like, honestly, it was just being back on the set with the boys for the first time. You know, and just riffing off with those guys. And, like, that, he's like, that first scene is actually the scene we've seen in the trailer now where he's playing hopscotch. And he's like, it kind of messed up, and, like, just the way everybody started, like, riffing and busting each other's balls, like, he was like, it was so amazing to be back in that setting, and it was like you never missed a beat. And both Keanu and Alex commented on that, you know, and agreed, like, it was just that moment in particular was one of the best ones from the shoot. But the other thing I loved too was listening to Samara and Bridget Lundy Payne talk about the film and being the girls, and, you know, how they, you know, tried to sort of be like the guys but find their own lane, so it felt like they were daughters but they were also their own characters. Something Kevin said that they absolutely nail. But the interesting thing listening to the two girls talk was, one, I didn't realize Samara Weaving's uncle is Hugo Weaving. She was like, as a kid, I watched Keanu kill my uncle over and over and over again. You know, and Kevin's like, did you call him Mr. Anderson? She was like, no. But she's like, it's an interesting relationship when that's what you grow up with, and then you watch Bill and Ted for the first time. And you're like, oh my gosh, like John Wick, Neo, the guy who killed my uncle all the time, is this guy also? And then Bridget Lundy Payne was like, both of them had never seen the movie. Samara watched it with her boyfriend. When he found out that was the offer she got, he freaked out, and she was like, I don't know what it is, you know. She's like, Australia, not a lot of, I guess Bill and Ted wasn't a big thing in Australia, maybe. But she was like, he freaked out, was like, we're watching them immediately, and then we watched them, and I absolutely fell in love, and then just started to work on, like, the character. And Bridget was like, I watched a couple scenes of, she's like, I watched like 2 seconds of Keanu talking, so I kind of had an idea with the voice, but I didn't want to watch the movie so that I could create my own thing. And they kind of were joking, is like, so you did 2 seconds of prep work for your audition? She was like, yeah, pretty much. But it was crazy to find out that, like, neither one of them had seen the movie previously, and Bridget Lundy Payne didn't even watch it until after they were done filming. So it was kind of cool to see what could be the next generation. Like, you could maybe get a spinoff with Samara and Bridget Lundy Payne, and that could be really cool, especially if they crush what they're doing, you know. And then you can have the boys come back in as supporting characters in their own stories if you want the franchise to keep going. And it's always new when you see, you know, young, new people brought into something that, you know, is already established. But again, just very exciting to hear the excitement coming from Kevin, and then obviously the excitement and just the joy coming from the entire casting, you know, the producers and writers, directors. Like, just, it makes me so excited for that movie. I can't wait for Bill and Ted Face the Music. So that panel obviously was awesome. I just had a grand old Keanu Saturday. But the other big panel that I caught on Saturday was the Antlers panel, moderated by, again, Collider's editor-in-chief, Alex Weintraub. And again, a more intimate view, just director, writer Scott Cooper, and producer Guillermo del Toro. If you follow this channel, you know Guillermo is one of my favorite directors on the planet. The dude knows more about movie history and filmmaking than you'd have to imagine most actors or most directors in the world know. Listening to that man talk about movies is something I could do all day, every day. Like, he is a genius at crafting a film and creating these monsters and his approach to things, but listening to him talk to the study and how he studies and how, like, tries to watch 3 movies every day. I have a big DVD collection. When I tote the fact that my DVD collection is almost 1,000 DVDs big, most people say I'm crazy, and then Guillermo's like, yeah, I try to watch like 3 movies a day. You know, he's like, I got a pretty big collection. It's like 7,000. It's kind of like a library. That's how I've always envisioned my DVD collection being, like a library where, like, you got the racks and like one of those sliding, like, rolling ladders and things. That's how I've always believed it to be in my mind. So when I heard him say that, I was like, oh god, like, one, I would love to spend a half hour with Guillermo del Toro just because, like, talking movies with that man is a dream. But if it could be in his place and you could see an actual library of DVDs, oh god, like, but anyway, just listening to him talk from the craftsmanship side, like the way he thinks about things, like even Scott Cooper, who this is his first foray into horror, you know, has made some unbelievable dramatic films, most recently Hostiles with Christian Bale. He did Into the Inferno, or Into the Furnace, which I think also had Christian Bale in it. Him and Christian Bale have worked a bunch. They're pretty good friends. But, you know, makes really, really, really good movies. So I was like, oh man, like Scott Cooper coming in to do horror and working with Guillermo, like that's gonna be awesome. And they're taking on Wendigo. Yeah, I think it's Wendigo. Maybe I could be wrong. But the creature that they're tackling is comes from Native American culture. It's like, it's not folklore. They really believe in this thing. And you know, he was talking about Guillermo, and he's like, you know, I had ideas and things, and obviously there's certain elements of the creature, like the antlers, that are a must. But he's like, you work on it with Guillermo, and he thinks about it like in just such a different way. He goes right to the root, and like actually like the connection that something like this would have to Earth. And one of the things Guillermo said that was cool was like, I didn't want it to look like a monster. He's like, I needed it to be a god, because that's what it is. You know, it is a god. Yeah, Wendigo. Yeah, I was right, Wendigo. You know, he's like, because that's what the Wendigo is. You know, it's like a god. So he's like, it needed to have features that felt somewhat human, so that you can kind of associate and recognize with it. But he's like, it needed to have features that weren't human. It needed to have things that made it something more. And then, you know, Cooper was like, yeah, he's like, you know, you were talking about like the bones and the fur, and Guillermo, you know, came on, and Guillermo was like, yeah, he's like, you know, I was like, the bone was the color of bone, and the fur was the color of fur. I was like, it can't be that. He's like, if you think about the Wendigo, he's like, it comes from, the root of where it comes from is greed, and colonialism and some of these things. And, you know, at the heart of it is, at the core, is the core of the earth. So he's like, it should be more like coal or ore, kind of ashen. And like they pulled those types of elements into the creature, which in the glimpses we've gotten in the clips and trailers we've seen, looks so sweet. But again, it's just listening to him, and specifically Sky, was like, there was so much I could learn, you know, from Guillermo and working with him. and really understanding. He's like, I wanted the movie to have this connection to, it follows a young boy, and to the connection to greed and the idea of how people treat each other, and what broken families can do and all these things. He's like, I wanted it to be terrifying. He's like, that was the best thing. He's like, from here on out, if I ever do horror, if Guillermo's not producing, I'm not making it. And Guillermo was the same way. It's one of the other things I love when you watch creators who appreciate and respect each other and then really form a friendship because of working together. And Guillermo very, very similarly was like, working with Scott was great. He's like, I knew where Scott came from, and I would get his dailies every day, and he's like, this would be a great look here, or I like this movement here, or this thing over here. But he's like, I was waiting for that Scott Cooper like moment, the energy that he brings. He's like, that was what was missing. And then he showed me his first like real legitimate set piece. I was like, there it is. And the thing Guillermo says, like, the reason I like to produce so much is because it allows me to continue to learn. I get to learn from other directors, and when, Scott was like, when you work with a producer who is a director, they understand where you're coming from. They get your fears and, all the pressures and, anxiety type things you have going on. And he's like, that enhances it so much. But Guillermo is just always, he's a guy who is a master at the craft. He's always looking to learn and absorb more and add things to his tool belt and his arsenal. He's like, if you work as a producer, you get to learn things from other directors, and then that becomes part of your tool belt. You take things from people and adapt it into your own craft, or you don't replicate it, but you put your spin on that type of a thing. And again, it's just listening to two guys talk about creating that are guys who are at the top of their craft, and listen to them just talk about Antlers and where it's coming from and how they craft the movies. Dude, it was like having a class, like a master class on filmmaking, listening to these two guys. It was absolutely amazing. Again, links will be down below because I highly recommend seeing all these panels. They were just absolutely awesome. And then the last thing from Saturday that I didn't really get to was Lovecraft Country. It's on my to-do list. I'm going to watch that panel right after this. Again, like I said, my watch list is long. But I've heard some pretty good things. It's coming up on HBO, so I'm going to look at that after, and we'll get a trailer reaction combo slash panel reaction video later on after this one drops. So be on the lookout for that. And then Sunday, I worked. Like I said, I was at work by 8, so I was out of the house by 6:37. And then I got home at like 6 o'clock. So I really didn't get a chance to hit any of the panels, but I wanted to make sure I got all the activations in because I knew those would eventually close. So I had started the con. Very first thing I did, thank God too, because the shirts went like sold out fast every single day. I guess they restocked each day, but the boys activation was basically you go and you create your own T-shirt. So I got this massive picture of Butcher that says Daddy's Home. Which I can't wait to arrive because it's badass. And then my friend Crystal was like, what did you do? It took her 3 days to finally get one. And she was like, oh, I just put all of them. It was like 3 lines of all the symbols. I was like, oh, you know what? That actually looks really dope. I kind of wish I would have done that. I wish we could have gotten things on the sleeve because I would have put like a couple of like patches on there. That would have been dope. But that was like a real simple one. And then I kind of sat off of the activations and obviously, as you heard, dove into a lot of panels on Thursday and Saturday. And then, so Sunday, I really just wanted to get all of them done. So you had American Horror Story. Actually, give me 2 seconds. I should probably get some of my things that I've got. You got, like, so that was the thing. Like, a lot of times when you go to activations and stuff, you leave with swag. So, like, making a shirt, like, for the boys. That's like something that you would get at an activation. I usually get something from the show in some way, shape, or form, that you get to take away. So American Horror Story, they did, last year was one of my favorite activations. It was for 1984, at the camp, and you got chased by a creature. It was terrifying, and it was so much fun. So this one, they kind of tried to recreate that in a way. It was like, you're going to go on this terrifying journey, but the only way to do it is to know things. And it ended up being a trivia quiz for American Horror Story as a whole. So there are 2 different quizzes. If you failed, you could go back in, and then you get a different quiz. And if you failed, you go back to the first quiz. And then when you get to the end, you put in your name, and then you put, like, your favorite season. And you end up with a printout. Everything that I had, I printed out. I then, like, taped so it was kind of like lamination. So for me, Murder House has always been my favorite. Season 1, still to date, is my favorite of all of them. But then I was like, that one's pretty cool looking. I wonder what the other ones are. So I worked through the trivia questions until I got all of them. So we had Murder House, we had Asylum, which we got. So I survived. It's the Test of Terror Survivor, Seaman. So you had Murder House, you had Season 2, which was Asylum, Season 3, which was Coven, Season 4, which was Freak Show, so you get Twisty the Clown in there. Then we had Season 5, of course, which was Hotel, so you see the interior of the hotel, which is so recognizable. Then we moved to Roanoke Island, so you got one for Roanoke Island. Then there was Cult. This is actually the only season of American Horror Story I've actually not watched. Maybe I will put that on my to-do list before the new season comes out. Obviously, we know here American Horror Story is a big part of this channel. Always look forward to breaking down all of those episodes, so I should probably get into Cult. And then, of course, we had Apocalypse, and then we rounded it out with what might be my second favorite season. I really, really dug 1984 because I'm a classic horror fan. So doing something that involves like a camp and murders was right up my alley. So I went through and completed both quizzes and then just did them over and over again until I had enough printouts where I got each season. So that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed that. Then Dave, which of course is Little Dickie's show on FX, he had an activation, which was kind of cool. It was like his desktop, so you could click and see like pictures from the show, like being on set. He had some music. He had a freestyle that was written. I wish it would have been recorded. But then the big thing there was a 15-minute interview he does with Gata, which was cool. I really appreciate it because Gata's kind of a crazy character on the show. I really appreciated how serious he took it, and like he had a whole list of questions, and he was like, at one point he said something that Dave was like, well, you know, and he's like, well, I know, but they don't know. Like, I really appreciated how serious Gata took it. And it was a good interview. Like, it is funny when it needed to be funny, but it was really insightful and kind of gave you a real good feeling of like what, Lil Dicky was thinking, kind of making the show and doing everything that they did, and where they might go for season 2 and the types of things. He's like, they obviously don't shy away from talking about big subject matter. So he's like, obviously in the world and climate we're in right now, you'd have to imagine that white supremacy and racism will be involved in some way. And he's like, that's one of the things I like about the show, is that we can talk about serious topics but find the way to bring the humor in. And the other thing that I thought was a big takeaway for both of them, it was their first time he was on camera. And Gabe was like, yeah, and like next year you'll be even like, now you know what's going on. And that was like, yeah, like now I know what to expect. I can do better, and the show can be better. So super excited for season 2 there. And then one of my other favorite activations from San Diego Comic-Con last year was the What We Do in the Shadows. It was just such a fun activation. It was like a house, and then they had like vampire actors in the house that you could interact with. They were really all funny, and everybody was there and like ready to play, which was a lot of fun. So this time around, they had a video game, which was dope. It's a little side scroller type game where you get to play as Guillermo as like a demon slayer. And you gotta kill like a werewolf, a vampire, some random creature. There's like 2 full levels with 2 bosses, and you go through it, and then like people were competing to be on the leaderboard. I got to number 24 on Sunday. I was ranked 24th. I thought I did pretty good, and then I wasn't even close. But the game was an absolute ton of fun. I wouldn't be shocked if we see that pop up somewhere online. It might still be available. Amazon might just leave some of their stuff up. Or I'm sorry, that's FX. They've closed there, but I would have to imagine that What We Do in the Shadows one could pop up again somewhere, because that one was a lot of fun for that show. And then the other big experience that I participated in last year was the Amazon Prime activations. Had a lot of fun out there. This year, The Boys, once again, was involved. Their activation last year was actually a lot of fun. You had to, like, go on this kind of, like, clue hunt through the electronics store that the car crashes into in Season 1. And it's, like, one of those things where it's, like, you get clues, and then if you call this, like, there was a secret room to get your swag. And then the experience involved, like, actors and, like, finding stuff. That was a ton of fun. This year, it was just the shirt and then, obviously, the panel. But if you wanted to get your like search on, The Hannah experience was freaking awesome. It took place right after the end of season 1, and basically you're looking for Hannah and the one other person who like escaped from the facility. And you basically have to go to, I think, 4 different places, and you have to find clues, solve puzzles, and then if you get stuck, they do provide the answers so you can complete everything. But, oh man, it was cool. Like, there was one where it was like you had to enter a person's house, and there was like a keypad. And, you know, usually like those types of escape room games, you're like clicking around to try to find something, and there was nothing to click but the keypad. I was like, wait. And they give you like videos, so like the guy who gives you your missions, you get a video every before each mission that kind of explains it, and then they give you notes and like messages that you look at and files. And in the files, they had like a phone number, and the phone number was real, so I called it, and it was like a voicemail that the person who lived in the apartment was leaving right as she was entering. You heard the tones of the 4 keys that she hit, and you had to match the tone to the tone on the keypad on the computer. So it got in depth, dude, and it was hard. It was some of these puzzles took like a hot minute. You know, I was like nervous I wasn't gonna be able to finish before it was all over. But I did successfully get through all of the different challenges. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, it was just because it made you think and it made you work to earn your Utrax personal identification card. Now, while I'm a personal fan of Hannah, in the real world, I would be on her side, not working against her. That's what the activation was, so you got an ID card. I didn't print this down to scale, so it's a massive ID card. But the old Seaman got one of those, which was pretty cool. And that was pretty much my entire Comic-Con experience. The only other thing that was takeaways, I printed out a badge for each day and then put like the days and my name on them, so it kind of felt like I was going to Comic-Con every day. Like I said, I think they just did a really good job and the best of their ability that they could do of bringing con to home. And one of the other cool things that we didn't mention was that, you know, they did some cool floor things. They sent the map of what the layout would have been inside the convention center this year. And what you could do is it was interactive. So you could click on a booth, and then you could go to that booth, and it might give you information or tips to like, hey, we might have like an exclusive drop at this time, which would happen in the actual con. And then if you went back to that booth around that time, you'd be there for those things and have the chance to win stuff or things of that nature, which was really cool. And then you could also buy the things that would be at the booth, so you could get your normal Comic-Con shop on, which was really neat. And then I didn't listen to it, but my friend was saying they had a channel where you could listen to the overhead announcements like you were inside the convention center. So they really tried to get the feel of Comic-Con, and all things considered, I loved it, man. I had a great time. Like, obviously, Comic-Con is different when DC and Marvel movies aren't there. But that aside, like, the panels that were there were awesome. You know, I mean, you had big people show up, you know, and the exclusive clips we got were great. The exclusives were awesome. The only thing that I really felt like I was missing was interacting with the people. And obviously being inside for like 5, almost 6 months now, not interacting with people made you miss it all that much more. But I had a really good time, man, and I give a lot of props to Comic-Con. Pulling off the con the way they did, I just thought was exceptional and rather impressive. It was way better and more in-depth than I would have expected it to be. And I hope they learn some things from this, too, that they can apply to the con itself. Obviously, getting into Hall H and getting into the panels and being at Comic-Con is part of it. Like, if you don't go to Comic-Con, you don't get to see the things people at Comic-Con get to see. But I would love for all the panels to be available somewhere. Like, even if Comic-Con created its own site where they could stream things and you could go into the room and watch it, where if you bought the ticket to be at Comic-Con, you could still watch the panels while you're there. That was definitely the best thing, was just being able to click, and everything was pre-recorded, and then it would just go live at its time slot on YouTube. And it was genius, and I would love to be able to go, like, you know, there that's the thing that, like, I missed about Comic-Con, is when you're physically there, you have like 22 panels between 3 and 4. You have to pick one of them. Here you have 22 panels between 3 and 4. You can pick 6 of them and put them in your watch list. So, but because you have to do things like that, you know, then you also have to schedule time to go do activations and stuff, and you end up standing online a lot and missing a lot of the con. It's such a guess and test because you spend so much time on lines. if you could at least watch the panels that were at Comic-Con, like, don't make it available to the public, because then you lose that specialness that is the con. But everybody who pays to go to con and who is at con, they should have access to everything. That way, if you're standing online for an activation, you know, like, say I want to stand online for the boys stuff at the Amazon activation area, while I'm standing online and waiting for 2 hours, I could be watching panels. That would be a really cool thing. I'd love to see them incorporate. And just some of the other things that they did. I think online exclusives is a cool idea. It gives everybody the ability, rather than like, oh man, I didn't get here early enough to cut the line off. Like, I just think there are things you can take away from this digital Comic-Con that can enhance the in-person Comic-Con that hopefully will be there next year. So there you go, man. We've reached the end of a Margarita Monday podcast with the Seaman himself, the host and the guest this week, and our Cayman Jack fake margarita, which is okay. It's very warm now. But it's not a true Margarita Monday if I don't finish the margarita, so I'm going to suck this up, pound this down real quick. There we go. That's empty. Now we have reached the true finish of this week's episode of Margarita Monday Meetups, where the guest and the host were both me. And we talked about, obviously, my Comic-Con experience, which was awesome. I really enjoyed it. But now, since I'm done talking, I want to know what you guys are thinking. What did you think of Comic-Con at home? Do you think it worked? What were the pros and cons? What did you miss? What did you like, or what enhanced it this time around? Do you think Comic-Con did a good job? Did they just do as well as they could have, or did you just think it was not something for you and you'd much rather just be there in person? Like, the con is something that has to be in person. And do you think there's anything that you could take away from a con like this? Any thoughts that you had? Favorite panels, activations, you know, swag. Actually, one of the coolest things, we'll see if we throw it up on the TV too. I'm big on art when I go to con. Last year I got this dope Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse poster that's framed and up on the wall right over there. And then a different Endgame poster. That's Thanos after everything's been blown up with his sword. His helmet's on his sword, and you have Thor and Iron Man down here and Cap up behind him looking at. It's so dope. So this year it was Mondo's Star Wars poster. 100 buckaroos, but totally worth it because it's amazing. The detail is insane. It has everything from A New Hope in there, and it's just gorgeous, and I'm very happy that was the last purchase I made at con. So let me know what your favorite exclusives, purchases, buys. What was it like running around on the digital floor? Just give me your experience of Comic-Con at home, especially because everybody was able to participate this year. Was this your first Comic-Con experience? Have you not been able to go to San Diego before? Anything you got to say about Comic-Con or Comic-Con at home? Down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this episode of Margarita Monday Meetups, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, haven't yet, and you want to come hang out with the C-Men anytime we're doing, our video podcasts, trailer reactions, movie reviews, TV reviews, just chitting, chatting, having guests, whatever it is we're doing here. You want to show a little love and support, and come hang out more often, jump over there, hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell that follows if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, another episode of the Margarita Monday Meetups podcast, I have been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Happy Comic-Con at home, everybody. I hope you had a great time. And until next time, peace! Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.